All right, so tonight's lesson, we've taken a lot of time here in the classroom to work through a lot of our workbook pages. If you are looking at this on the YouTube, I really encourage you. These workbook pages are extremely valuable. If you're confused and don't know what to do, you need to contact somebody. And one way you might contact someone is to call your local synagogue. And don't be too pushy about being a Messianic believer. Just say that you're learning some Hebrew. This book is just Hebrew. It's not Messianic, so it's not going to offend or set somebody on their noodle about it. And just say, I'm trying to learn these things and I'm a little confused. Is there someone in your congregation who could help me a little bit? So if you're on the YouTube and you need some help, call a local synagogue. Usually they're absolutely thrilled to share Hebrew with a Gentile or with another Jewish believer who hasn't learned Hebrew. But the workbook pages are getting more and more serious now. When we were in lesson 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, they were fun little color the page, recognize the letters. But now in lesson 10, we're being asked to recognize sentences and we're being asked to recognize vocabulary words. And if you are very light about it and you just kind of skip it over and you just kind of go, well, yeah, I know that, you will begin to miss a lot, because as we move on to book number 2 and the second 10 lessons, you will fall farther and farther behind. So I greatly encourage you to get the workbook pages done, even if you have to pause and come back to your YouTube lessons in a few weeks when you've caught up all those workbook pages. But particularly in lessons 8, 9, and 10, look at those workbook pages and try to do every bit as much of them as you possibly can. Also, another resource for you is to go to these apps. I'm not very smart about smartphones, but I'm learning. So, in the Android phone, you go to Play Store and you're looking for ABC Hebrew Translator. In an iPhone, you're going to the App Store and looking for ABC Hebrew Translator. Both are free and good resources, I am told. Another good resource is a Hebrew English dictionary, because as you have begin to write out, let me just borrow Paulette's book here. Paulette, I did it right. As you learn these words and you need to look them up, you can go back into your earlier lessons and find these words. They're all key words and vocabulary words that we have had an opportunity to learn, and you can look them up in your Hebrew English dictionary. The very best would be to find it in Hebrew and then look it up in Hebrew in your dictionary, because that's going to give you the most learning. But any way you approach it, that's okay. You know, I'm not here to be a taskmaster. I'm here to offer you an opportunity to learn to read Hebrew. Okay? All right. So that is done. And now we want to take a look in lesson 11. So I don't know if you brought your book 2 with you tonight, but you don't have to have it to be able to do this little bit, because we're only going to spend a few minutes introducing lesson 11 with a couple of new things. Lesson 11 generally takes 2 weeks to do. We'll see if we do enough tonight to make it one lesson for next time, but I won't promise. We may spend 2 more weeks on lesson 11. Okay, so in lesson 11, on page, what page are we on? Flip my page over here. On page 2 in book 2, okay? When we first started, I told you that there were going to be some letters, and I showed you how the letter looked, and I told you that I would treat you as an adult, and I would tell you sometime later you're going to meet another letter that looks similar but is a different letter. This is one of those times, okay? So one of the letters is this letter, sin. Sin. It looks very much like a shin, but what is different here? The dot. This diacritical mark is not in the same place that it is when it's a shin. So when it's a shin, that diacritical mark is over here. But now we've moved it over here, and we've given it a new name. Its name is sin. So that tells us the sound that this letter is going to make is not a sh, as in Shabbat, but now, because the diacritical mark is over here, it's going to make the sound of s. Okay? So that's fun. But to make it more fun, the other letter that we're going to learn tonight is the samach. Okay, so we learned how to do a sound. Now we're going to put that sound into a letter. Samach. Samach. Okay, and you don't have to make it samach, just samach. Okay, but it does have a little on the end of it. Okay, and if we follow our rule, samach is going to have the sound of s. Oh boy, yay. Equal. I don't know if you can see this. Can you see that? Not really. Let me get a different color.
The S sound, definitely. Oh my God.
How's that? You see that? Okay. Are they the same letter? No. They just have the same sound. So this equal sign is only talking about the sound. Okay? When I draw a samach, I start over here so that I have a tail. Okay? So when I draw a samach, I'd go like so. But you might choose to go like that. Okay? It's a handwriting issue. But a samach's got to have a tail. Just as several other things that we've run into, letters have a tail, something that sticks off, something that draws our eye to say that's not an O, okay? Because we don't want to confuse it with our English letters. It has a tail. So I draw it this way. I don't know if that's correct or not. Look in your book, turn a couple pages over and see where they first have you drawing it. Where do they have you starting it?
At the top line, leaving a tail and coming around like you did.
Like I did here? Woo, I must have learned Hebrew from somebody good. Okay, so that's my preferred way of doing it. Just like with every other letter, I'm not going to hold you guilty of not drawing it the way I draw it. It's my handwriting. You draw it with your handwriting, okay? All right, so this letter is sin. This letter is samach. Following our same pattern, they have the same sound. Now comes the trickier part. You thought that was great in lesson 1 when we had 2 vowels and they said the same sound. And then in lesson 2, we didn't add any new vowels. Hooray! But there are 18 vowels in Hebrew. Yes, you want to talk about this. Yes, you do. Sure, you do. You want to talk about this. 18 vowels. But they're not all totally alien to you. They all fit into categories that fit into English vowels. They're not English vowels, okay? But there's a group of them that sound like what our letter A can do. There's a group of them that make sounds of what our letter E can do. They're a group that sound like what our letter I can do, what our letter O can do, what our letter U can do. And there are some that, remember when you were in elementary school and you learned the vowels A, E, I, O, U, and sometimes Y. So just like that in Hebrew, when we have some vowels that we add a Y sound to, and we've done some already with ui, remember? Okay, when we've put a yud after it and we get a little bit of a Y sound in there, okay? So in the beginning, we gave you 2 vowels that made the exact same sound. Now we're going to give you 3 vowels that make totally different sounds, because that's going to expand our repertoire hugely on what we can read. And that's why I was saying at the beginning of this lesson, if you're watching this on YouTube, you need to be up to this point and not just sort of skimping along, trying as hard as you can to kind of maybe sort of do it. Because all of a sudden, by adding 2 new letters and 3 new vowels, there's going to be a whole lot more that we can read. Okay? And we don't want to get lost in there, all right? So the first vowel that we're going to learn is called sigol. And this is not in your book. These names are not in your book, but the vowels are in the book. Is this the first one of the ones on your new page? Okay, so sigol is the first one on the new page?
Yeah, I guess. Well, yeah, I guess.
Okay, so this has 3 dots in a triangular shape. Okay? It makes the sound of eh. You could say a short E, sort of, eh. But it's an EH sound. It's how we, when we write, what should I say, I'll write an EH because I want that longer sound of eh. Okay? The next one is tasir. Okay? Tasir. This could be spelled T-Z-E-R-E. Remember that we have other letters that blend the TZ sound or TS sound. Okay? So most English speakers will spell it tasir. In our book, it doesn't give us the name of the vowel. I think as adults, we need the name of the vowel so that we can have a way to reference one another. And we can say, put this vowel under it. Not put that little one that does this, and that, it kind of does this. No, just a name. Its name is tasir. Okay? And tasir is 2 dots right beside each other. Now, what's the name of that other vowel that's 2 dots? A schwa. And a schwa goes what direction?
Up and down.
Up and down, vertically. This is a horizontal one, okay? Don't worry, there'll be a diagonal one, but that's later.
Oh, of course.
If you've got 18 vowels, you've got to have a lot of shapes, right? Okay, so tasir, 2 dots right beside each other. I made these remarkably bigger so that everyone in the classroom could see it, okay? But you don't typically draw a great big Mickey Mouse ear, okay? You put a dot, okay? You do want to make sure that you can see the dot. Like in my book, I'll never be able to see these. I may have to go back and ink them in, so that I can see them. Okay? Now, the third one, oh boy, look at that one. That sounds exciting, doesn't it? All right. So what if we divide it up just for the sake of discussing it? What is this one? A sigol. So it's just a sigol. And do you remember another vowel? Let me go over to this other board over here.
Patak, patak.
Ah, hatak patak. And how did the hatak patak look? It was the schwa, though we hadn't learned it yet, and the patak, right? Okay? This one is a schwa and a sigol. Now, they don't call it that, though. They call it by that hatak name, okay? So you might see it spelled like this, hatef. I have always spelled it hatak. Maybe because I heard it pronounced hatak and I wrote it down and I didn't know. Maybe this is Sephardic and this is Ashkenazic. Maybe this is phonetic Ashkenazic. Who knows? Spell it any way you want. Because we're not writing the name of the vowel for anybody else to read. We're using it as a learning tool for ourselves to learn the name of the vowel, okay? So the name of the vowel is hatak sigol, just like this one was hatak patak. This one rhymes, it's funnier. Hatak patak, okay? Not so funny, doesn't rhyme, hatak sigol. but it's made of two things we already know. So it looks very complex when we first look at it, but it isn't any more than the Hatak Patak is very complex. Ouch. Okay. The Sigol and the Hatak. It is a Shva, but it's the Hatak. Okay? And I don't know why that is. Maybe somebody can find that out for me. But it starts with the Hatak and then is the Sigol. Therefore, its name is Hatak Sigol. It's not as complex as it looks, but it can be overwhelming to suddenly have 3 new vowels. Okay? Anybody completely confused? Completely overwhelmed? Want to run with hands screaming through the air?
And what sound does it make?
Okay, oh, thank you. All right, so the sound that Hatak Sigol makes is an E sound.
So it's a long E.
Not super long, but a little long. E.
So it's almost like the.
Don't compare it to anything else.
I can't
It says
compare it to
E.
the Harek.
It says E.
But I can't compare it to the Hayrik or what.
No, no. Right now, just believe me, it says E. Okay? But it's not E.
Like me? Me.
Me would be a good. Jerry, what was the sample they gave in yours?
The E in metallic.
In metallic. In the word metallic.
Meh.
Are they saying EH?
No,
Metallic.
Meta.
Metallic.
So it's short E.
So it's more of a short E.
It's phonetic.
Oh, as an egg.
The phonetic E, that's a good way to say it. The phonetic E. Okay? Let me put a little, let me put this over it just to remind us for right now. We're going to aim for more of a short E than for a long E. But let's see how it works out as we're starting to read words, which we're not going to do tonight because our time is about up, okay? So for tonight, what I wanted to get through was an introduction of these things because this can be overwhelming to add 2 new letters, especially one that looks like a letter we've learned before, and one that's drawn oddly. Well, maybe they're all drawn oddly, but anyway. And 3 vowels. That's a lot of information, okay? So look in your book. Don't try to move ahead and do lesson 11 yet, but just look and see. Maybe try and read the story at the bottom of the page if you want to, okay? But you can certainly look at lesson 11, but don't stress yourself over it, okay? Are we good?
The Hebrew letter that I'm going to focus on tonight is the Ayin. And you've already had this letter, so you know this letter. But we'll talk about it in the pictographics. And this letter is interesting because it originated really not with the Hebrews. It was one of those things that came from the Egyptians. And but God uses all kinds of resources, amen, for his people. And what we see for evil, he can mean for good. So that's sort of the story of this letter tonight. And it really means to see and to know. Now remember, the Hebrew is a concrete language. That's the word I couldn't think of last week. It's a concrete instead of abstract language. And so when you see something, you don't just see something, you understand it. When you hear something, Shema, you hear it, but you understand it and you do it. When you see something, you understand it and you do it. So it's a concrete language. So when you hear the Shema, hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one, it means to see, to understand, and do. Okay? So that's the whole Hebraic concept of those senses. And maybe one of these days in Messianic Delaware, I'll do a lesson on the 5 senses and what they're supposed to be doing. So I think that's one of my next steps. But I got to get back to the United States first to do that. So, but the ancient letter looks exactly like this. It looks like the I. So it just means to see and to know. This I was derived from the Egyptian culture, from the Eye of Horus. Okay? Joni and I learned that in Egypt, and you see it all over the place. You see it on your dollar bill. You see it in masonry. If you're familiar with masonry, you'll see it in masonry on the top of the pyramid. There's a whole nother lesson to understand why that all-seeing eye of Horus is at the top of that pyramid. That's a whole nother lesson, another day. I'm not going down that rabbit trail tonight because that's a long rabbit trail and Jerry knows it. So, but the all-seeing eye of Horus was the influence of this letter. Okay? And it means to see and to know. So there's a word that derives from that. So hold on, let me make sure I get it correct. Yep. Okay. That's a resh. Yes, there is a vowel. There is a vowel. Let me make sure I get the vowel correct. Patak. That's a patak, by the way. Okay, patak. So what does that say?
Ra.
Ra. This means evil. Evil. As in the evil eye. And it is named after Pharaoh. Ra is the sun god, all right? And the Pharaoh was the sun god. He was the incarnate sun god. Whenever there was a new Pharaoh that came to power, they would make a new bull called an Aphis bull. And this bull would mark the beginning reign of the new Pharaoh, and he literally, in the eyes of the people, became a god, the representation of the sun god Ra. All right? So the Egyptians, Ra was their sun god, but for the Hebrews, it was evil. Okay? But there's an interesting thing. There's 2 different types of eyes. Remember I told you Satan comes to steal, destroy, kill? Okay, and copy. He never creates anything. So he takes what was the Father's and he corrupts it for his purposes. So everything is corrupted that was meant for good. So there is 2 eyes. One is a good eye in the Hebrew culture, and one is a bad eye. All right? If you change this vowel sound, I'm going to make sure I get this correct. To, I think it's these. We're going to learn those.
You could tell them on the speaker that we're going to learn those tonight.
We're going to learn those tonight. It's re, re-ah. And it means friend.
Means what?
Friend. It means friend. Okay? So just by the simple changing of the vowels, it means friend. But Satan has corrupted it, that particular word, for his purpose and his destruction of mankind. In fact, the roots of the word Ra, if you re-as, is noise or outcry. Ra'ev means hunger or famine. Ra'ad means quake or tremble. Ra'ah means to rage or be evil. But Ria means friend. Raha means feed, pasture, shepherd, seek after, delight in. Meira means trusted friend, companion. Mira means pasture, and the root word for friend, ri'ah, speaks of watching over and caring for. So there's a light and a dark here, okay? But this word, again, this word evil came directly from the hieroglyphics, and it came, the shape of this letter came from Egypt, meant for the Hebrew alphabet, and there is a good side to it. So, but it's just been corrupted. The light, or the eye that you see at the top of the pyramid and all that, if you want to do a really amazing study, do an amazing study on the stones of fire and the levels of the New Jerusalem. And I'm not going to go down that road, but that is an excellent study, and you will learn quite a bit about what
The stones of fire
stones of fire,
and the other one?
the levels, the floors, the foundations of the New Jerusalem. Okay, one of the things in John, and I'll just give you one caveat here. One of the things in John is that he measures the New Jerusalem. He measures it, and it how many cubits is it? 144 cubits? Is it 144?
Which part?
The length, depth, the length, depth, and
Jerusalem is in fathoms.
huh?
It's in fathoms because it's like 1,800 miles.
Right. But the description of that, it's equal sides, it's equal depth, and it's equal height. And most modern churches will look at it as a square. I look at it as a pyramid, as a pyramidal shape. That actually fits better. That's the only other shape that can fit that, and it makes more sense. I believe that's one of the reasons the Egyptians wanted to copy the New Jerusalem with the pyramids. Does it make sense? There are pyramids on every continent in the world. There's a reason for that, and which we don't know. So that's an excellent study. I would encourage you to start digging and pulling stuff out. Stones of fire is a clue, all right? The stones of fire in the breastplate, the stones of fire in the New Jerusalem on the foundations. Just try that. There's a lesson that I did on stones of fire on the Messianic Delaware website. So that lesson is still there. The PowerPoint is still there. So, and if you have any questions, you can call me. But I wanted to let you know that the evil eye also has a good eye to see and understand and know, and what the Father meant for good.